welcome back to the coding chamber. This time we're going to look at give a deeper look into FL statements. So, I'm going to open up a new file, and the first thing I just want to cover really quickly. This is not it's this useful little tool. It's called a comment. It allows you to add notes into your programs, so that if people read your source code is pretty much just the code you're typing right now. They'll, especially with more complicated programs, they'll know what's happening. So, for example, in this case, I'm saying this is a comment, and comments are completely ignored by the compiler, and the compiler is just the thing that turns your code, your source code, into something the computer can run. So it's completely ignored. It's simply a way so that other human beings it makes code more readable. It allows people to understand more easily what is happening. So, first thing, let's create some variables. Variables are always useful. And I'm going to introduce a new data type, which is very key to FL statements, known as the Boolean. Pretty much, Boolean has two values. It is either true or it is false. That is it. It can have no other values. So let's create something called bool. Okay, so here I'm going to talk about this for a second. Variable names. So you saw this highlight up. That means the word is special, meaning it is recognized by the environment or by the Python language as being in some way significant. Do not use these words as variable names. It will scream at you. So let's call this Boolean, and we're going to set it to false. And you made it lights up. You could also set it to something like true. And let's have a Boolean 2. You probably don't want to actually copy down this code. If you want to, you can. This is going to be more of a conceptual, or this is going to be more of just covering FL statements, so it's not that important. So we're going to say if Boolean, right? And then we're going to print tis true. Now, let's talk about this. This is exactly the same. This statement right here, so it's taking the value, God, I cannot type. It's taking the value of Boolean, and it's checking if it is true. And if it is true, just like any other statement, it will run the code within it. Okay? That is the same statement. It says if Boolean, if true, right? Then do this thing. Next, we're going to introduce a new little bit. There's the else if. And we type it like this. Pretty much else if is like an else statement, except it has still a conditional. So what it does is like, okay, if the first thing's not true, then is this thing true, right? So Boolean 2. Print wow. Because we're going to be amazed because we clearly know Boolean 2 is false. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about this. So pretty much if this fails, right, if this if statement does not, so if Boolean is not true, then it's going to go to this next line and say, okay, well, Boolean's not true. Is Boolean 2 true? And if it is, then it's going to print wow. So that's what happens. That is what an else if statement is. It's pretty much it's called an if then else. What it is it says if something. So if something. So you know the basic structure for if else. But then there's if then else, saying okay, if something's true, then do something. If another thing is true, then do something. Finally, just if neither of those are true, do this thing. And you can add as many elifs as you want. So you can have elif, you can have if, elif, elif, elif. You can have 100 elifs and then an else. I would not recommend doing that because that would be a lot of typing. But next, we're gonna you don't just have to check one thing, right? So for example, you may be like, well, what if I want to check Boolean is true, and then I want to check Boolean 2 is also true? Well, you could do this, right? Do a nested if statement where you say, okay, if this is true, and if this is true, and if this is true, then do this. But there's actually an easier way to do that. You simply type and boolean 2. So that's saying, okay, if boolean is true, and boolean 2 is true, then do this thing. However, there's another statement. So this line of code will only go through if boolean is true and boolean 2 is true. We can also do or boolean. So we're going to print wow if boolean 2 is true or boolean is true, right? So that is the thing. That's incredibly useful. We can also check if stuff is false by adding that little thing. Or here, boolean 2 does not equal true. Right? So what is that saying? Oh, so normally we'd expect, if boolean 2 is true, but but when we do this, the exclamation point and the equal means, okay, if boolean 2 is not equal to something, right? I believe, I don't know if this works in Python, it works in other languages, you can just slap like that, and that does exactly the same thing. So we're going to print works. It may scream at me, I am sorry if it does. Save this. Ugh. 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 I don't like doing this. Okay. Let's just call this if else. Okay, and let's run it. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So you can't do that. I'm sorry. I apologize. It does work in other languages, but Python, for some reason, that is not valid syntax. That is valid syntax, though. Is it? I think it is. Yeah, it's so right. So wow, and works, right? So we can also add. So I'm gonna go over the code just in case anyone did not get anything. So with this, so the first one is saying, okay, so we're initializing two variables. Boolean is true. Boolean 2 is false, right? Booleans are simply either true or false. And then you can think of them as binary, right? They're either 1 or 0, true or false. So now it's saying, okay, if Boolean is true and Boolean 2 is true, then print tis true. However, we see it did not print tis true because Boolean is true, but Boolean 2 is not true. The next statement, else if. So, okay, if this is not true, if this is not true, but so trying to find my words. Else ifs only run if ifs fail, right? So this one fell through and it go into elif. So it said, okay, else if Boolean 2 is true or Boolean is true, right? So this will only not compile if both of the statements are false. So if, say, Boolean was false, like that, then Boolean, then it would not print wow. And then finally we have the beginning of a new if statement, if then statement. This is if Boolean 2 is not true, then we're going to print works. So now if we run this, the only chain we're going to see is that it only print works because both of these are false. And it will not, the else if will not run its code, it will not enter into the else if both conditions are false. If one condition is true, or will work. If both conditions, the only way and works is if both conditions are true. So, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, of course, ask them down in the comments. If you liked this video, it's always an option to subscribe. And, goodbye.